So you've heard about, of course, the so-called gun show loophole when it comes to, hey, no background checks because it's a private sale. Have you heard about the FBI loophole? Oh, you haven't? Then you came to the right place, because we're going to be talking about the hundreds of thousands of people who the FBI dropped the ball on. Let's get into it. So we all know that the anti-gun crowd loves to talk about the so-called gun show loophole, whereby folks can purchase firearms lawfully, pursuant, of course, check your local listings to whatever your local jurisdiction laws are. And of course, they ignore the fact that firearms acquired through such means as gun shows account for about 0.5% of all tracebacks. So not really the biggest problem in the world right now. But of course, what you won't hear them talk about is the failures in the existing system. The system I'm talking about is NICS, the National Instant Criminal Background Check Systems. This is what folks have to go through in most states once you've purchased a firearm or are attempting to purchase a firearm from an FFL, a Federal Firearm Licensed Dealer, i.e. a gun store. Now, NICS was started back in 1993 from the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act. And if you haven't purchased a firearm before, basically you fill out paperwork, 4473, it asks you a bunch of questions, you go through it, you talk about the fact you're not a felon, you put down identifying information, and so forth. There's going to be one of three outcomes that's going to come from that. Basically, a proceed, in other words, you pass, good to go. A do not proceed with the transfer, Mr. Dealer, i.e. did not pass, not good to go. Or a, we don't know. It's a delayed. In other words, maybe we can't access all the information, we still need to get into this, and so forth. So what happens is the FBI has 3 days to figure out whether or not the dealer can transfer. In other words, is the person prohibited? But what happens if they never get back to you within the 3 days? Well, under the law, the FFL is allowed to proceed if they so choose. And of course, this creates a bit of an issue, because we've got all these different groups talking about the fact that we absolutely positively need universal background checks, while ignoring the fact that the FBI, the group that sets up the NICS checks, doesn't even finish processing all of the checks that are out there. Let's look at some of these numbers. In 2014, the FBI did not finish about 2.1% of background checks, as reported by a media outlet linked in the description box below. These numbers continued to rise through 2019, where it was up to 2.5%. And then we are talking about the first 9 months of 2020, which saw a huge surge in gun sales, which we're going to get to in just a moment, where this got up to 3.4%. So we saw 2.1 to 3.4% scaling across 2014 to 2020. Why is this all relevant? How does this fix together? For starters, by 2020, let's actually, rather than using percentages, let's actually talk about numbers. Throughout the first 9 months of 2020, this was over 316,000 unfinished background checks. After 90 days, the FBI has to call it the quits. So again, day one, you go ahead with the background check. After 3 days, the FFL can transfer it if they want. And after 90 days, done. Too bad, so sad. Now, according to FBI protocol, to ensure that they are in compliance with administrative code policies, procedures, they actually delete and stop this at day 88, so they do not run afoul of the 90-day issue. But again, this is how we get to the situation where under federal code and federal statute and federal practice, we have 316,000 unfinished background checks in the first 9 months of 2020 itself. And again, the same people who are insisting on universal background checks are completely fine pushing to a system that drops the ball 3% plus of the time, which, by the way, accounts for a much larger number than the so-called gun show loophole. Guys, super short break in here. Please take a moment, subscribe, comment, like, share this video around. About 80% of you who watch my videos are not subscribers. Let's hopefully fix that and get those numbers moving in the right direction. Thanks very much. Back with the show. If anti-gunners cared about actual background checks, if they actually cared about these sorts of things and stopping crime, they would be worried about having to staff the FBI properly and fixing these existing problems. Not only are these problems existing, but they continue to grow. But that's, of course, part of the reason why I don't really think this is what it's about. And I'm guessing that many of you down the camera agree with me in that. This is far less an issue of how do we actually try to save lives for many folks. This is much more an issue of how do we set up a national registration system. Because, of course, we can't count what isn't measured and we can't measure what isn't documented somewhere, right? then we can't ever figure out who owns what and what belongs to whom. Let's go through some of the numbers again. So just as a note though, there are about 20 states, give or take, that handle some or all of their background checks. An example for those of you who may not be familiar with is my home state in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, all long arm checks go through the NICS background check system, so it goes through the FBI. But if you purchase a handgun, it actually goes through the Wisconsin Department of Justice system. So it goes through a state check system for what it's worth, which it is what it is. So to give you some ideas about how many checks actually occurred nationally, between about 1999 and 2005, we saw about 8.6 million background checks annually. Now, these numbers continued to rise until we were, if we look at, say, about 2012 to 2015, we're now at closer to about 22 million background checks through NICS annually. And again, this is only NICS. And then between 2016 to 2019, this number rose to 26 million. And then, of course, 2020 happened. 39 million NICS background checks happened. In 2021, those numbers sagged, but only barely, down to 38 million. And 2022 saw a little bit of a sag down to 31 million. Yes, if you wondered why your local gun store dealer is driving a Ferrari now, this might have something to do with it. And by the way, if you're also wondering what happens when the FBI discovers that a potential buyer can't own a firearm, so in other words, we're post day 3, but we're pre-day 88. What happens, generally speaking, is they'll reach out to the FFL and they'll say, hey, did you proceed with this? And if the answer is yes, then the FBI asks the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, otherwise known as the ATF, to retrieve the weapon. So this is where, literally, the feds come to your door and say, hey, sir or ma'am, you got this firearm. Do you still have it? Can we take a look at it? And well, maybe that's a subject for another video. Let me know in the description box below if you want to see that. Annually, on average, there was about 3,800 people who this happened to between 2014 to 2019, which then rose to 6,300 about per an article in USA Today in 2020. Right, that's nearly double if you're keeping track. If the anti-gunners were concerned about making sure that firearms did not fall into prohibited hands, they would not be pushing for universal background checks. Statistically, that is probably not going to do as much as if we just fixed the existing system. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about what's going on in different states, again, let me know in the comment section below. I briefly touched on Wisconsin here, but I just want to bring you this information because I think it's really interesting. And I think it, again, really points to lots of the motives about what's really going on out there. And again, I do not say this with one iota of editorialization for political party X, Y, Z, or anything of the sort. I'm just trying to put the pieces around together on the board because I have a little bit more time to think about this and I wanted to present this information to you. But what do you think about this? Am I kind of going down the right road with this? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you've not already done so, please take a moment, subscribe, comment, like, share. It helps us with, frankly, the algorithm. It helps our channel grow. It helps me get more content for you. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, you might like some of the other content that we've been up to recently. Please feel free to check out these other videos. We'll see you in the next one.